I'm Karen Holman, and I've been on the board of the Palo Alto Historical Association for a number of years now. And every month we have these general meetings where speakers come to speak, and they're generally hour-long programs with one speaker or one topic. And as we're always looking for new topics to cover, one year it just occurred to me, it's like there are all these little snippets, these little vignettes that we hear from people around the community that aren't full-long program length, but they're nevertheless really interesting stories to capture about the community. So we came up with the concept of having this Palo Alto Vignettes, which we have every year the first Sunday in December. Today we're going to have Sam Zaccaro, who's going to speak about his involvement with Palo Alto's utilities, especially the utility of electricity. He was involved with the relocation of the Alma substation, Alma Street substation, and his father, ironically, was involved in the installation of that. We're also going to have Jill Harris, who will speak to us about her mother and how her mother happened to come to Stanford University and how tennis, her sport of choice of tennis, brought her to Stanford University. We also have Alice Crenshaw, who's an energetic 93-year-old, and her daughter Dorothy Katie, and they're going to talk about how they were the first residents of Green Meadow. They actually bought the first home there that was actually one of the models that Joe Eichler himself sold to them. And finally we have Winter Dellenbach, who's going to talk about communal living here in the 1960s and 70s, especially up on Struggle Mountain and the land, and her relationship with that association with David Harris and Joan Baez and many other notable figures. From my perspective, these stories are very important, as is all of the history, especially for local communities, because it really provides a context for our lives. The past really does set the stage for the future, and it's a continuum that carries on. And having these stories at our access really enriches our lives in that way. So that will be our program today.
But thank you for inviting me to talk about electricity in Palo Alto and specifically about the Alma substation. I would like to spend most of the time talking about the early history of the substation, and then I'll talk just briefly about the expansion we needed to do in the 90s, and then ultimately the decommissioning we did in 2007. So if I could have the next slide. This is a picture of the Alma substation, and this is how it looked in the 80s and early 90s. Down on the right side, the blue building is the JD transmission building, and on the left side is Ole's car repair shop. You probably know where that is. And you can't see behind, but the Peninsula Creamery building is just behind the substation. And just so you know, a substation is a place where the voltage is transformed from a big high voltage, in this case 60,000 volts, down to voltage that's used in the neighborhoods, 4,000 volts in those years. So can I have the next slide? Just some early history. Before Alma substation was built, the city of Palo Alto was generating its own electricity between 1900 and about 1938. And this is a picture of one of the 4 diesel generators that was in the powerhouse located over on Newell Road, pretty close to here. And by 1938, the city began purchasing electricity from PG&E. Again, the city's demand for electricity grew beyond the limits of these generators. So PG&E began supplying electricity at 4,160 volts. So by 1952, the city's electric demand increased again, and beyond the safe capacity of even what PG&E was supplying at 4160. So they needed to do another expansion. So if I could have the next slide. This is an article from the Palo Alto Times, 1951, and we don't have time to read the whole article. So if you'd like, just flip to the next one. It's just a little zoom in, and the first couple of paragraphs pretty much say the extent of it. More money is needed to expand the system to keep abreast of the ever-changing needs, increasing needs, rapid growth of the city, and they talked about subdivisions forming and more growth in the city. And I think they were asking for $500,000 to expand the electric system. By the early 50s, a lot was happening in town. The last of the baby boomers were being born, and the city was undergoing a large growth spurt. And I wonder if anyone knows what was happening near Hanson Way in 1952. If you could go to the next slide. The the birth of the Stanford Research Park. The Varian brothers, Russell and Sigurd, set up shop here on the corner of Hanson Way and El Camino. Just to give you an idea, to purchase electricity for Palo Alto in those years, the city paid around $400,000 for electricity wholesale in that time. And today, that number is $65 million per year. So it's been quite a growth since then. The next drawing, please. So the city needed to expand its power system. And what they decided to do was design and build 4 new electric substations and strategically locate those in town. The downtown substation was given the very affectionate name of Substation B, and it was designed with the other 3 substations by the Westinghouse Electric Corporation. But just down the road in Sunnyvale, if you switch to the next slide, was the Sunnyvale Westinghouse switchgear division. And this picture here, the handsome one is my dad, and the other handsome one is my late Uncle George. And the 2 of those guys were wiring these switchboards at Westinghouse Electric in the early 50s. My dad represents some of the people who built the substation at the very beginning. So in October 1953, the Alma substation was first energized. And actually, the same month and year I was first energized, 1953, so in October. This is a picture of Alma 1 and 2, and it's a little dark. The unit closest to us is one of the transformers. The transformers are 1 at each end, and the total combined capacity was 4,000 kVA. It's like 4,000 kilowatts. And in those years, that was probably enough power to power up about 4,000 homes. And today, with today's plasma TVs and computers and air conditioners, that could probably only maybe power about 1,000 homes. So this handled the downtown and the neighborhood surrounding for a number of years. So that was the history of the Alma substation when it got built. And then in the 90s, Palo Alto saw another load growth. Companies like Digital Equipment Corporation were moving into town, and with them came a lot of computers. And the downtown really started growing and needing more power beyond what we had at Alma Sub. So we needed to do another expansion. So this is a picture. What we had to do was tear down the JD transmission building, which was right next door. The city actually owned the building and leased it out. And when we needed to expand, we had to then take that building out. We were asked to build a temporary wall, and I put temporary in quotes because we built the wall in 1995, and the wall is still there today. It's a little bit faded. It was designed by a local artist. Her name is Marta Toma, and she's done other art in town here. This picture here is a picture of the substation as it looked just before we removed it. And if you notice the next slide, is the site with the substation decommissioned in 2007. So this is how it looked, and it's now ready for some sort of development. I understand perhaps housing will go there. So it's kind of ironic that, well, one thing, the substation served the city and the downtown for 54 years, and it was very reliable. The transformers themselves are amongst the most reliable transformers the city's ever owned. The Sharon plant manufactured the best transformers, in my opinion. And they're still in service today at East Meadow Sub and at Hopkins, and also supplying some power for Varian Associates at Hanson Way. So there's equipment that was really well built. The wiring that my dad and my uncle did was very reliable. We never had problems with the wiring. And it's kind of ironic that my dad and my uncle were representing the people who helped build the station, and I was representing one of the guys who took down the substation. But more than that, I helped the people maintain it and expand it over the years. And I happened to be the engineering manager when the decision was made to relocate the substation from its site over to the Quarry Road site. So some of the equipment that was kept is still energized at Quarry Road, and we did move it over there. So in closing, I just want to say I'm very proud to have worked at the city and be a small part of the proud history of the electric utility. So thanks a lot.